Today's video is special as I am joined by something of a legend who you might not know who he is, but presumably you own one of these books. Jeff Ashworth, the man, the myth, the legend. How are you?
I'm well. Where are these legends? Where can I read the legends that have been told about me?
Well,
Like any
in my
good
community.
well, what are people saying? What are people saying about me?
Right,
That
when
I feel
if I've said like I'm interviewing the guy who made these, or if I in my videos when I'm like, how shall we fill this encounter? We'll go to this book, right?
right.
And everyone's like, those books are brilliant. I have this one and this one. And that there's no one has said, this is the internet we're talking about. No one has been
It's true.
like, it's all right, but what it needs is everyone
I'm
glows.
sure you could find some folks who have said
Well, I'm not
it's
looking.
just all right if you if you take a peek. If you look barely close enough, you'll see the cracks start to show in my renown and acclaim.
I'll tell you
But
what
thank you for
the
having
thing
me.
is, Jeff. The thing is, you over deliver by about 500%. I would say. I think you're burning yourself out too quickly. We don't deserve this.
Certainly, that may be true. I think one of the things that I do struggle with is, starting with an idea and saying, "Oh, you know what would be cool is if X, Y, Z happened." And so then you just kind of keep saying, "You know, it would really be cool." And the more times you say that, the more content you end up forcing yourself to create because you're chasing that thing that is of interest to yourself, which can sometimes add time to production and great headaches for people who are trying to help you get the book to press. So over deliver is generous. Thank you very much. But I think it's generally in pursuit of just trying to make as good a book as I can, the type of book that I would want if it were if I were buying it. And yeah, sometimes that I think increasingly as every content creator looks at ways that they can maximize what they're delivering while minimizing the cost to create it in terms of resources, personal and financial. That balance is increasingly hard to find.
So, what inspired you to start doing the first book?
Yeah, I think that for me, I work for a small publishing company. We do books and magazines, and in general, what we try to look at is what doesn't exist. Right? Those are the types of questions we try to ask ourselves when we're planning a slate, a book season. And I was playing some D&D at the time. And one thing that I noticed some DMs struggle with, and that our VP of publishing noticed that some DMs struggle with, is what we call connective tissue, these in-between spaces where you've got this one big idea for a story that you want to showcase and present to your party, and then you kind of have a sense that this will happen and then this will happen, and so those are big pillars of your story that you're trying to tell with your friends. But then you just have these middle spaces, like, okay, we're going to go from this big town to this larger city, but we've got to go on the road to get there. And they're like, is there an inn on the road? Is there a village? Can we stop and get supplies? We're going to have a really great conversation around the fire tonight. How long is that going to take? And do we need to set up watch? And you're letting them lead the story. And you're like, man, I should have planned a cool fire pit encounter. That would have been a nice thing to bring to the table. And so the more we kind of discussed with GMs what they were missing and what would be helpful to them in terms of session prep, the more the book started to take shape. And it was from there that we sort of came up with the premise of organizing it, the structures of the sections for that first book. And from there, everything else kind of spun out, right? The success of that first title led to, oh, well, what else do GMs need? And I know personally, like I struggle with coming up with names on the fly. And so it started up with like, I think the interesting thing about any D&D party or any RPG party is they always glom on to the thing that you as the narrator don't necessarily find very interesting, but you gave a character a weird accent and suddenly that's the most important person to have ever existed. And so then you're forced to come up with a backstory for that person on the fly, because your players start asking them questions and what are their interests, and how are they connected to the larger story. And you don't want to look them in the eye and say they're not, I just made them up right now. You want that world to feel lived in and planned to a degree, and to exist outside of the impact that your party is having. And that incredibly difficult for me personally to do on the fly. And so the NPC book is kind of an answer to, well, who are all these people? And inevitably, like, what are they carrying on their person? Because someone in your party is going to try to pickpocket them at some point. And some people have like an Excel spreadsheet of things that might be on somebody's person. But for us, organizing the book, I thought it was just nice to have a little short list. So, short version, I guess, to wrap things up, is to say, like, I just try to ask, like, what do I need, and why doesn't this exist? And if it exists, great. I'm not going to try to replicate that. I'm going to try to create something new and different, or maybe that solves a problem specifically that people haven't necessarily tried to solve.
Yeah, in your NPC book, which I think is the most common book that is owned by the people I come across. Okay, so you open up the NPC book and you have very in-depth characters, double page spreads, all art, just so much wants and needs, secret or obstacle, what they're carrying. Like you say, it's you've ticked all the boxes that is ever asked. But I have a post-it note that this double page that you have is just I need nothing more than that. Ever. Brief description, names, also carrying. It's just, you could have game after game and never really repeat yourself if you're playing with different people. And the way that it's structured, in that some are medium amount of text, some are full on text, so it's every need catered for. And then for some unknown reason, you're like, oh yeah, I'll put a side quest generator in here. I'll put 3 unique one-shots, and you're opening up going, what, there's one-shots in this? Do you know what I mean?
Which some people have complained about.
What? Oh yeah, sorry, I gave you too much.
Well, I try to live by the philosophy of you can't please everybody. But you can't be everything to everybody, but you can try to give everybody something. So some people like one shots, so we include them. Some people don't, and so we give them the other 80% of the book, which is not one shots.
But once, I read a lot of one shots, okay, and a lot of them are like, you go to a mushroom grove, you get attacked by some mushroom folk, you win, and you're like,
good luck. Yeah.
But like, yours are just all really good. Like, are you stealing them from someone?
Well, in some cases where we have freelancers who come in and we extend an offer to write an adventure, because writing good adventures is difficult. That's why a lot of people don't do it. And so we've had the privilege of working with some really great people on one shots here and there. And I think that's helped the book quite a bit. All the books that we've done thus far in the Game Master series, outsourcing that work has been really useful for me, because those tend to take up the most time for me personally. Is writing a solid one shot, and also structuring them in a way that is that gives you more information than you may need, because you can't really dictate what a party is going to do once you give them specific offers and specific prompts. You don't want to create an on the rails adventure, but by default, most one shots kind of are. You kind of say, the princess is locked away in this tower. Do you want to rescue her? And if they say no, well then great. Okay. She's stuck there, I guess. End of adventure. Thank you all for coming to tonight's session. And if you end it there, then you've ended it there. If you don't, then, well, what happens next? And so you want to try to supply enough information for your party to feel motivated to do a thing. And if they don't do that thing, you try to motivate them a different way. And if they're still not motivated to do it, then you kind of just have to throw up your hands and say, well, what do you all want to do? Which is really sort of the proactive approach to role playing, I suppose. Which is good, right? When you put control of what happens next in your players' hands, and they're not just reacting to things that you've put in their way, or goals that you want them to chase. you don't have to plan as much, which is nice. But then that's where the books come in handy, because you haven't planned, but they say, I need to go to the temple connected to my deity, and it's like, shit, I should have probably prepared that. But if you haven't, then you've got some fill-in stuff, which is nice.
Do you use your own books?
Sometimes I use the NPC generators quite a bit.
They're the best.
It's good to have.
Yeah.
I think what I am guilty of doing is playtesting stuff. So I'm working on at least a book and a half generally. And so when I'm playing with groups I GM for, it's useful to have that feedback to say, like, is this an interesting NPC, or is this person not interesting at all, and why didn't they connect with this? Did this trap work? Did it appropriately maim or prevent my party from doing this, that, or the other? And I try to tweak it and make notes for myself, and then before I go to press with it, I'll have edited it based on player feedback. I can say sometimes things that I've presented to them like have worked too well. Like I created this trap that I was really excited about, that I wanted them to go and explore because I needed to see if it would work, and they refused to go see it because the lore that I had woven into the story about the trap was, in their opinion, too. It made them feel too cautious and scared to go and try to like break into this bank vault, which was unfortunate because I didn't get an opportunity to play test it with them.
Yeah, you mentioned traps there. You have a launch pad where somebody steps on a plate and it just launches them at the wall. I mean, that is so simple but so inspired at the same time. You know?
Most of my traps, I think probably if I did enough research, I would say you can probably find them in a Wile E. Coyote cartoon. Because that's how my sense of humor works. I don't know. I think traps in general, again, going back to what do I struggle with as a GM, and how does that inform the type of content I want to create for other GMs? I struggled with making really solid traps that felt like meaningful obstacles that allowed for other components of your party's character builds to shine. So most traps are pretty straightforward in that if you succeed on this investigation check, then you can avoid. And so one of the things that I tried to create is spaces where maybe you avoid it, but there's still other things that happen. Even if you know that it's here, it still becomes an obstacle that you have to get through. And then other traps, I created to just because I thought they were funny, like the Molotov Goblin. I just thought was funny.
Yes, exactly.
And fun to illustrate. So.
Yeah, just like your well, in fact, you have the reverse knock, the door that smashes your head in, but also. Your traps are like double tier sometimes. Someone gets covered in like honey or whatever. Oh no, I'm covered in honey. Oh yeah, there's a bear as well. And you're like, oh my God.
But I think, again, that for me goes back to the philosophy of, is there a workaround where the trap is still triggered, but you don't take as much damage as you might have if you have some creative play. Like if you use prestidigitation to remove the honey, are you now less in danger of being attacked by a bear that's at the bottom of this pit? I would leave that to the discretion of the game master running the trap. I would probably say yes. But things like that, I think, are make the trap come alive for your players, because you're describing things that are happening in sequence, but also second to second. So this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens. But in between those breaks, they have opportunities to try to stop XYZ from happening.
Yeah. What do you think makes for a random encounter? Sorry, a memorable.
Yeah. I was just gonna say random. It's random. The players don't expect it, and it touches them. They encounter it. When I think about a random encounter, and I know that term has like a history in the RPG space. And I think because my history in the RPG space is probably not quite as lengthy as others, um, my thinking about it is uh, this is a place where this is a location, a space within an area. And there are people who live there, or creatures who are nearby, or there's a functional curiosity implied by its existence. If you come across a fountain in the middle of the woods, that's interesting. I'm going to go look at that. Right, you want your players to be engaged by the description of it. Does it feel out of place? Does it inspire a little bit of curiosity in them? And then from there, I think about, well, okay, if we've established a location, what are those questions? Who does live here? What are they interested in? What might the party gain by interacting with them? And so I try to weave all of that stuff into a general description of the space, and maybe some GM notes or mechanics associated with it. And then on top of that, add like a D6 table, which to me is what makes it random. All the other aspects of that encounter are fixed. It's the prince's throne room. Okay, well, that's where the prince sits on his throne. But the other elements we can make randomized around that are, well, who's at court today? And so you roll the die and determine who's at court, so that you're leading that space for a group and they come back to it more than one time. You have something in your back pocket where you can roll a die and there's another thing that happens. I try to think of it in terms of the party. You want your party to feel like they can have an impact on the world around them. And so you want to, almost like in an improv game, you want to offer them opportunities to have an impact. You want to give them something to say yes and to. And if they say no way and run off, that's a reaction. And that's certainly a viable reaction. But you want to present them with problems they can solve, obstacles they should overcome, chances for them to flex their role play chops. Those are the types of things that I try to include when I'm thinking of the best ones that I've created have some version of all three. The worst ones are hopefully at least one of them, right? Engaging on one of those levels. Or, maybe the map is really cool and it's just a fun space to explore and creates challenges for strategists and war game fanatics. Like, that's a specific type of player, and that player is different than the person who wants to solve a murder mystery by flirting with everybody, right? It's like a different type of player. You can be both, but creating encounters that feel engaging for all types of players kind of involves, at least to me philosophically, and maybe this is why I do too much work, is trying to think through, like, okay, well, what does this type of player want from this thing? If they come here, what are they going to be interested in? And trying to just provide a line or two that might spark creativity on the GM side.
Yeah, well, your line or two might include what you're trying to your main focus of the topic is, but then you'll say, like, there's a portrait on a wall, and all you're doing is describing the room to give it more, of a picture in their mind. But then they're sometimes like, oh, he mentioned a picture, therefore that's got to be of importance.
Of course, and you do fall into the trap, I think, as a GM, of saying, well, there is a trap door under the rug, so do I have to mention that there's a rug?
Yeah.
And so there is a tunnel behind the bookcase. Okay, so you walk in this room, there's a bookcase and there's a rug, and there's also a painting, a coffee table, and you just start naming furniture. That's difficult. So generally what I try to do is say, you enter a room, it's set up like a philosopher's study. There's books and sconces on the wall, and it's dimly lit, but you can tell that the person who furnished the space likes to sit here and read as much as they possibly can for as many hours as they can. And you let your players say something to the effect of, I want to look around, I want to see if there's anything, whatever. And you ask what they're looking for. And sometimes they'll say, I'm looking for secret trapdoors. And it's like, okay, well, then you just roll for that. I'm not going to make them investigate every piece of furniture. That's going to take an hour. And it also saves you on describing specific pieces of furniture and trying to, in your description, hide the one that actually has importance to it.
Yeah.
It mostly works for me. It doesn't always work.
So, what is your inspiration? What is your motivation to keep doing these books?
Um, I mean, I enjoy any opportunity to have a truly blank canvas when your brain is kind of all over the place. Is one that's worth exploiting, right? If you have people who are willing to pay you to create stuff and you enjoy creating it, that's a good spot to be in.
Yeah.
What I like about the Game Master series is even though it has a template associated with it, and there are goals that I'm trying to achieve with each entry. It's still ultimately you're writing for D&D, so it can be whatever you want.
Hmm.
And I know that's probably too general because it can't really be anything you want, but it mostly can. And so you start writing something, and what do I want to write about today? Well, this is interesting. I saw this bug, and I want to just explore what if there were a race of bug people and what are they like, and maybe they're like cicadas, and I can't stop hearing the cicadas outside my door because it's brood X time and they've all come above ground. I'm going to write about them for a little while. And you just
Yeah.
write about it, and then suddenly you're googling cicadas and what are they like, and and then you've got a whole little space and you find one line that's interesting about what makes cicadas tick, and you weave that into a narrative arc for this tiny little space. I don't know. There's an aspect of it that's therapeutic. There's an aspect of it that is probably, in a selfish way, a means to present a worldview, or at least highlight the dangers of a worldview, or the darker side of a worldview. I think that's one thing I love about D&D, and I think that it's and role playing games in general is how instructive they can be. As far as like if you just think about them in terms of a philosophical thought experiment, it's you get to present for lack of a better expression, you can say to your players, "This is the trolley problem. What do you want to do
Yeah.
about it? Do you want to save? Do you want to save this baby?" Or this village of 1,000 people, and it's like, and then you let them struggle with it, and you just figure
Yeah.
out what they think.
Yeah.
And then no actual babies have to die, but they still have a lived-in experience that informs their worldview moving forward. Games are lovely that.
I have a couple of questions from my friend Emmy Ralph. She wants to know, what was the first character you ever played?
I played a bard named Nick Flint. He was a bard rogue build, and it was again the first time I played, the first time a lot of the folks in my party had played, and I partnered with a friend of mine who was a half-orc prostitute with a heart of gold, who was not much of a talker, and so Nick Flint was a halfling and did all the talking for her, and she was the muscle. And we had kind of a Rocket and Groot thing going on, even though we didn't intend for that to be the case. I definitely fell in love with the Bard class as part of that playthrough, and I find it difficult for me not to play Bards. I just think that they're really handy.
But is that because you're a creative sort of writer type as well? Do you think you can feed into that easier?
I think part of it for sure is I don't know if you can tell this about me structurally. I'm not a very strong person. I'm not a very fighting my way through a problem with fists has never been the direction that I've taken as a human being, because it wouldn't work. And so I generally am the type of person who tries to use reason and logic to get myself out of a jam, or to convince somebody that my point of view is the right point of view. And so it's less about like, ooh, bards are musicians and their music is their magic. That's not what draws me to the class. I think what draws me to the class is we're about to fight a dragon. It's like, yeah, but can we talk to him first? Like that's kind of more my approach to problem solving, and bards generally have good skill sets to do that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Certainly other classes could as well, but
so her second question is, can you tell us something you did learn about yourself from playing RPGs?
Tons of stuff. I think the biggest thing is like you can min max your life to death, right? You can sit there and say, this is the best possible character build. I got really, really sucked into message boards about like how to create the perfect crit engine, and here's a smite here's a smite build, and I was like, oh yeah, like a Sorkaden build, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to wield a Shadow Blade, and I'm going to do this amount of damage. And at the end of the day, like you can still roll a 1, right? You
Yeah.
can still fail, and that in and of itself is instructive to me. When I think about my life, I just became a father, and I think it's useful to remember there's no amount of planning that you can put forth for yourself that will lead to an inevitable success every time. You're going to fail. That doesn't mean you shouldn't put in the work, doesn't mean you shouldn't
Mm.
read the message boards and try to have the best, present the best possibility for success for yourself. But by doing a little bit of expectation setting and recognizing that, yeah, you can still, you're going to roll some 20s, but you're going to roll some 1s. Like it's just
Yeah.
kind of living with that is good. I don't know. A lot. I think RPGs in general encourage lateral thinking, and reward lateral thinking in general. So always recognizing that there's more than one way to solve a problem. Always thinking through, okay, what options do I have on the table? What's my spell list look like? Resource management, huge in RPGs. I wouldn't consider myself an incredibly organized person. But I learned through playing RPGs that I can be organized if it matters to me, if I care about it. I've got my character sheet, I got my spell slots all organized. I understand exactly how many castings of this particular thing I have before I go to press or whatever. And I learned I'm capable of it, which means I
Yeah.
should probably do more of it in my real life.
Mm.
Yeah, a lot of stuff, to be honest.
What is something like you're proudest of all your work?
Probably the thing that I'm proudest of, and it's interesting because you just asked what I've learned from playing RPGs. I have a book coming out in February called Everything I Need to Know I Learned from RPGs, which is more of a philosophy, like life approach to life book. And I've taken all the core classes of D&D, kind of drawn lessons from each class, how to live your life like a barbarian without losing your job. And, if you're a warlock, it's all about the power of networking. So taking basic concepts from each core class in D&D and Pathfinder and Starfinder, drawing lessons out of those. There's a section called Real World Monsters where I worked with an illustrator named Chris Seaman and created some monsters inspired by the things that we encounter every day, so that the insurmountable pile of junk in your basement, or detail devils, which are those little imps that will ruin a project if you don't pay close enough attention to them. There's one called an ancient red dragon, which is just a big task that you think is only going to take you a weekend, but it lasts a full year. So coming up with stat blocks for those was really cool. And then just in general, working on that book was incredibly rewarding because it ticked a lot of boxes for me. Like I said, one of the things I do love about RPGs is what they can teach you about yourself, about each other, about the society that we're trying to collectively build together on a daily basis, or at least try to stop each other from tearing apart. And I do believe that if more people played games like D&D, that we'd have a better society. So I'm very proud of the work that went into that book, and the way that it came together. And I hope people who like the Game Master series will dig it. It's not a Game Master book. It's not a book of encounters. It's a book
Yeah.
of perhaps unsolicited advice, but it's also, there are ways to take what's in it to your table. There are stat blocks for all the real world monsters. There's a section of I think it's called practical magic. So it's like things that are magical in real life, like a firm handshake. But it's written in a way that you can port it over to 5e if that's of interest to you.
So you've not crammed 8 one-shots into it?
Sadly, no. Although one of the premises of the book is that life is a one-shot adventure. So you got to make the most of it.
Yeah, inspiring stuff. What about struggles then? I know you don't accept praise, Jeff, but anyway, what struggles have you had along the way?
Idea fatigue, To a degree.
Really?
In terms of, well, sure. I mean,
You've only thought of 8
anytime.
million.
I do struggle with coming up with names for people. Like I said earlier, it's one of the reasons I wanted to write that book. Because I presumed other people struggle with names. But there's always one thing I do struggle with is the amount of content that exists in not just the 5e space, but like role playing in general is so incredibly dense and seemingly growing exponentially every day as more and more people say I might have a career in creating content for RPGs, and because of the mechanics of independent publishing and the internet, the way you can self-publish now.
Hmm.
I live in mortal fear of someone saying you stole my idea. When how could I possibly have stolen your idea? I didn't even know that your idea existed, and that's
Yeah.
not to insult your idea. It's just
Yeah.
I don't have time to read everything that exists in the world, and it grows more and more. The pile is just larger and larger every day, and when you couple what is printed with what people are doing in the actual play space, um, if you only tasked yourself with listening to every minute of Critical Role, it would take a year of your life, if
Hmm.
not more, just the sheer amount of content that they have. And I try to take my dogs for like an hour walk, and that's about it for my time to listen to podcasts.
Yeah.
So I'm working my way through the stuff that's real, but I struggle with knowing out there somewhere is an idea that is exactly the same as the one that already has been published somewhere, but
Yeah.
that I don't know that it exists because how could you possibly consume it all? So I apologize in advance if you think that I've stolen your idea. I promise it was not intentional.
Yeah.
But yeah, I struggle with that. And I try to solve that by just again saying like, what do I think is interesting? What do I think is fun? And hopefully, every genre movie that's ever been made has aped something that exists
Yeah,
somewhere.
of course.
And so with adventure writing in general, I think if I'm overt about the cues and the stuff that I am being inspired by, I think that helps. It tamps it down a little bit. It's Ocean's 11, but it's in a fantasy realm. Okay, great. Now we know what it is. I'm not stealing the plot of Ocean's 11. That would
Yeah.
take too long.
So, what about your riddles then, and the ciphers? How much are they borrowed, twisted? How original are they all? Because there's a lot there.
So for the riddles book, again, kind of coming the traps, puzzles, and dungeons book, truly almost ended my life. It was very difficult to create. Was constantly under deadline, and I felt like to do the book justice, to do the concept justice, to answer the question, what do I want? What do I need? Well, one thing I need is riddles, right? If you Google like what are some good D&D riddles, there's not a lot of great answers. And so that was very straightforward. Like, how do we come up with these? Um, and for the ciphers and the riddles, I outsourced some of the riddle writing because I needed help. So I worked with a guy that I rely on named Jeremy Brown. He's a fantastic writer. And worked with another writer named Alex Lafort, who's really talented. They were able to come up with some riddles and puzzles for me. And let's see, who else did I work with? They're thanked in the back, like a long list of people on that book because it was too much to create on my own. So, but for ciphers, we do some puzzle books at topics on cat puzzles, and we're working on the licensing side with Clue right now, doing unofficial Clue or official Clue puzzle books. And ciphers are something that we've explored as a puzzle type to present to readers who like that type of puzzle. And once you understand how ciphers work, you can kind of create a bunch of them pretty easily. So in the book, I tried to just teach people how to fish, I guess, on the cipher side. Because if you learn a type, if you learn a Caesar cipher, then you can do a bunch of them. If you learn a fence cipher, you can do a bunch of them. If you learn, oh, I forget what they're called, where it's like a block cipher where you create short bursts and they have to piece them together. And so again, trying to over deliver, I guess, thinking to myself, well, anybody can look up a Caesar cipher and how to make one. How can we add value to that? And so we tried to come up with some different ideas to loop in story-based or encounter-based play that then has a cipher associated with it. And so one thing I ran with the group was like you're killing these oozes, and every time you kill one, like they drop a slip of paper. And so the slip of paper, if they had to kill all the oozes, and then they got all the slips of paper, and then they put the cipher together to get the message that was trying to be sent to them by a blood sorcerer, typical D&D stuff, typical blood sorcerer.
So how do you address potential repetition?
When I start writing something new, I try to read, like if I'm diving into a new book, I try to read what has already been created, at least in the Game Master series, just to refresh my memory on what I've already done. Then I dive in. Inevitably, some stuff is going to feel like a version of something that I've already created, because that's just how my brain is, right? Like Martin Scorsese has several movies that are of a type. They feel like each other, but they're not the same film.
No.
And so I try to stick with the things that I find funny or interesting. I try to remind myself that you can't really reinvent what a dungeon is or is meant to be. You can reskin it. You can add different elements to it to make it more challenging or less challenging. But at the end of the day, it's an underground maze they're meant to explore. There are a couple different ways that they can get to the heart of it. Once they get to the heart of it, there's this, that, and the other, and then they get to leave or they die there. And so if you just kind of stick to that template, inevitably some of it's going to feel repetitive. And so what I try to do is add narrative or dice roll based variables to everything that I do, so that even if you are playing an encounter or looking at a location that feels exactly like one from a different book, the odds that it will be precisely the same are pretty minuscule, just because of the way that dice work.
Yeah. So was there like cultural or mythological inspirations for the dragons in the Dragons book, for example?
Oh, so the Dragons book was created by this cool team at Jetpack 7. And we worked with them to, they published their book independently. We worked with them to bring it to a wider audience through the Game Master series. So they did a killer job with that book. All the artwork in that book is just staggering and incredibly inspirational. And I know that in the development of it, it was really important to them to think through what exists in the world, like what have people seen before, and what can we take and kind of spin out somewhere. So in the case of the mummified dragon and Abzul, I know Jim Pinto created that character and was drawn to looking at Egyptian religion and the ceremony and tradition of mummification, and what does that look like, and how might that influence and inform a dragon, and if they were mummified, what might that look like? And Jim has a very dense love of mummies. So he has a whole thing in the Villains book that we came out with recently about mummies and how mummies can be a drag, but if you play them in a particular way, they can be really engaging and cool. So check that book out if you haven't gotten it. But yeah, for every dragon, they kind of said like, okay, we want to create a dragon that has impossible to penetrate skin. What does that look like? All right, well, maybe it's armor. Why is it armor? Why would a dragon be wearing armor? They don't need armor. Oh, maybe it's this. And then they come up with this backstory associated with that little hook. And so thinking through what can we do to make this different, I think inevitably leads to an idea board, which inevitably leads to concept sketches, and then you see the sketches and you're like, oh, I need to add the artist who was inspired by this idea has drawn something incredibly engaging, and I need to find a way to weave in this visual into the lore and the stat block that's associated with this creature. So yes to mythology and yes to lore. There's like Yormon the world serpent is an old Norse myth. There are a couple other dragons that are inspired by different cultures across history. But then there's some originals as well that were kind of born out of, again, what would be cool, what would we think would be interesting at the table.
Yeah, like, you open up the book thinking, all right, there's a book of dragons, there's a bit stat blocks, lair actions, fair enough. But then you've got, like, you actually say what treasure is there. There's tactics, which is huge, hooks, encounter conditions, just another over delivery where you're like, wow, yeah, it's fantastic.
That was some of that material was the stuff that we wanted to add in when we published the Legendary Dragons book, was making sure that there were if the mission statement of the Game Master series is anything, it's we want to make Game Masters' lives easier. We want to make their session prep easy. And so yes, you could sit and read all of this stuff about this cool dragon that you want to incorporate into your game, off begging the War Destroyer or whatever. But if you know all the lore, you're still kind of stuck with, well, how do I introduce this creature to my characters? And so we try to do some hand holding. And if you don't want to hold our hand, don't. That's fine. But if you do and you want that shortcut, we want to provide that information so that you can easily port stuff over. And we try to do that with just about everything. Is to just give GMs option.
Just like with you throw a Dragon Rider's class in there, and then you think, wow, that's cool, a new class. And it's Dragon Companion pages. And then Dragon Maneuvers. You can also see your train of thought and where someone's got to go, well, you just put the pen down now. We've got enough.
Well, you try to balance, like, how many pages do we have and how many pages can we get if we can fill them.
And you're like, no, enhanced spells using dragon components. I want to put dragon parts and how much they weigh. That's just inspired, because that's what you do need. All right, I'm going to steal their dragon's teeth. What will I get this for in town? And you're like, that's probably a really obvious question, and I need to know.
Yeah, it comes down to trying to create resources that may be of use, right? Most GMs may never run into that problem, but you're gonna get that one party who's got that dragonborn ranger who wants nothing more than to harvest dragon parts from every dragon that they slay, and so suddenly now you've got to factor in how dragon parts are going to influence your world's economy and spell structure and the very nature of the weave, and it's like, well, shit, that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
I don't have the time for that. I have a family that cares about me. I need to do that as well.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to get through some little last questions here. D4 nearly crippled you, it says in the back. Is that a true story?
Yeah, it's true. They're very small and pyramid-like, and much like if you step on a Lego piece late at night, it's piercing damage for sure. And when I say it nearly crippled me, I stepped on it. And it was late, and I'd put all my weight on that foot, and there was nowhere for my weight to go, and I had to fall in order to not take as much damage from. I preferred the flat bludgeoning damage of falling on my face to the piercing damage that was going through my foot.
You also had in your book Luke Gygax forward. Was it?
Yes, for the Dragons book. I mean, it's really great to know that the work, and again, that was the title, the first title we picked up from Jetpack 7 for the Game Master series. That his lineage and his love of the game, and the spirit of D&D, which until very, very recently felt like we've created this way of telling stories. And we want to then hand over the keys to you, the community, and you can use them however you want. I think the spirit of that has influenced and inspired so many independent creators. So for him to lend his name to a group that wants to publish supplementary content that isn't necessarily official D&D material, but is meant to serve as a means to facilitate storytelling at tables around the globe. I think is fantastic. And he obviously loves the game and what it represents for people, and understands what his legacy represents for other people. So really special to have him associated with the book.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we're going to almost wrap. My last question to you is future plans. What are we looking for?
Yeah, well, I can say I did tout it a little earlier. The Everything I Need to Know I Learned from Role Playing Games is out in February. So my plan is to tell people to read it, convince my dad to read it, and yeah, hopefully people will dig it. Right now, I am in the process of putting the finishing touches on the Game Master's book of more random encounters, which will be everything you love about the Random Encounters book, but just more. It's just cranked to 11. There are, in the intro for the book, we talk about how power creep is very real, and you're always looking to engage your players, but eventually, once they've killed the cult that was trying to assassinate the king, like you have to take them to some other plane because they're just too powerful and for the mortal realm. So there's a lot of what we call extraplanar places, or places off the prime material plane. We have a section full of adventure locations that take place in outer space. So getting to explore the sci-fi side of things and some fun tropes born out of that genre. So it's meant to be compatible with things like Spelljammer, or Planescape, or Starfinder, but also tries to present stuff that you can use in a normal fantasy 5e campaign. There's still plenty of taverns and inns and weird temples that are upside down and things like that. So so that one is really exciting. It'll be out in the fall of 2024.
Excellent. Well, I am just waiting for your Villages, Cities, Towns book.
Villages, Cities, and Towns. Maybe
2 years, I'll give you.
Yeah, 2.5 on this slate for sure. Yeah, I think after the Random Encounters book, we're doing Wilderness Encounters, so it'll be primarily
yes, travel, basically. Try to fill that gap.
Exactly. Every environment you can imagine, and bad things that can happen therein.
What another must purchase that is.
Put it on your list.
Yeah.
Put it on your Father's Day list for 2025.
Jeff, thank you so much, and a big thank you just from all of us who live off your books in our games. Thank you so much.
Of course, my pleasure, and thank you. And if you think that they're of use to you and think they might be of use to other people, please continue spreading the legend that apparently exists about me. I would be really, really grateful.
Lord
so
Ashworth.
thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Of course.